And with that, we are thrilled to welcome CBS Sports' Mike Renner to the show. Mike, how you doing today, man? Thanks so much for joining us on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show.
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on, fellas.
Mike, in your latest mock draft, you had the Browns taking Kadyn Proctor at number 6 and Denzel Boston at number 24. We'll dive into some of the other stuff, but we were talking pre-show on the Proctor pick. You seem to be a lot higher on the Alabama prospect than the consensus in terms of the top tackles in the draft. In your mind, why is Proctor your number one tackle, and why does he necessarily fit in your mind with whatever the Browns are concocting here under new head coach Todd Monken?
Well, he fits with the Browns because they need a tackle desperately, right? Like any tackle fits with the Browns at this point in time. But I think him specifically because of what he could be. I have him as my top tackle because of the upside. I see a guy who is special physically. I think we'll see that next week at the Combine. And it's when he's in shape is the biggest thing. He's 366 pounds is what he was listed as Alabama. And at times, reportedly at Alabama, he was up over 400. And when he was that, he wasn't good. And in certain games, you saw him look slow. But I thought by the end of last season, he looked in the best shape I had seen him. And his tape was the best of any guy in this tackle class. So I will bet on a guy who's still only 20 years old, has freakish physical tools, and to me has the type of balance and sort of play and body control that can translate to the tackle position in the NFL. So for all those reasons, he's my top tackle. And for the Browns specifically, why I lean with that number 6 pick, OT, as opposed to wide receiver or really any other position is because tackle just historically does not last long. If you want an elite tackle, you just go look at the elite tackles throughout the NFL. More often than not, they are top 15 picks in the NFL draft. It's a somewhat easy position to scout because it's so physically demanding that you can see the guys who are going to be the upper echelon in the NFL very early on in their collegiate careers and then obviously as prospects. So that's why I have them going Kadyn Proctor, because you don't necessarily need the guy right now. You need the guy 2 to 3 years from now to be elite, and he has the best chance of being that, in my opinion.
Mike, I do like his athleticism. I kind of compare him when you look at him. We got a guy named DeJuan Jones, but I think Proctor is a better athlete than he is. And he was also a higher rated player coming out of high school as well. Some people got a problem with the fluctuating weight. DeJuan Jones had a problem with the fluctuating weight. Also, there's some out there that project him like Maui Noga into potentially being a better guard than a tackle. What are your thoughts on whether or not he's better than Maui Noga in some of the weight concerns at tackle?
Yeah, I mean, I have those exact same weight concerns, right? You're going to have to promise me, when in the interviews, when you get through the process, that he's going to have his weight under control. And, with those Epic and stuff nowadays, I feel like it's getting easier, right, for these guys, or at least it should be. So at least there's that, right? So that part, I do agree. The guard thing, I think that's also why I'm high in him, is because pretty much all the concerns when you watch his tape are, does he have the foot speed? It's going against NFL speed on the edge. If you move that guy to guard, I think all those concerns go away and you have like an all-pro potential guard. And so it's kind of similar to the strengths and weaknesses that I see from Maui Noah. I just think Maui Noah isn't quite the physical specimen that Proctor is. He's a little bit shorter. He's a little bit more traditional guard build in terms of size, in terms of body composition. And then just for him on the edge, I didn't think his hands were as good and didn't have as much sustain and pass protection. And then he didn't face the top competition, right? He's playing in the ACC. Proctor's playing 3 years at left tackle in the SEC. He's battle tested in that regard in a much more pass-happy offense. I think that was the other thing about Miami. It's a lot of screens. It's not a lot of NFL concepts, whereas Kalen DeBoer, what he runs at Alabama, or what he brought over, is a lot of drop-back passing. So you got to see what Proctor would look like in an NFL offense. So that's kind of how I see those two and why I project Maui Noah a little bit more on the interior than even Proctor.
Mike, you had Denzel Boston going to the Browns at 24. How much does he look like his daddy?
Well, he's not massive yet, right? Like his dad got in the NFL. But he's the similar type of player, right? He is a strong, physical outside receiver with incredible hands, incredible ball skills, and it's just super reliable, right? I think all these sons of former NFL players, you kind of like the scouting reports all the same. They all just seem to know how to play football at a better level than your average prospect, or even like, your above average prospects. Guys like Patrick Surtain come to mind when I think of guys like Antoine Winfield, right? They just like see the game better. And that's how I feel about Denzel Boston. So he's not quite the physical specimen that his dad was. I don't think he's going to test off the charts, but he's more than good enough athlete to win at the NFL level. And for the Browns specifically, just that reliability factor is so important at that position.
Mike, we've talked about a few fake trade down scenarios for the Browns, and the way I look at it is whatever the Browns cut off in terms of blue chip prospects in this draft is, that they can't get below that. They need so much talent on this team. And if they think there's only 4 blue chip guys in this draft, then maybe they move down. If they think there's 6, well, in my opinion, you can't move out of that top 6 spot because you need to come away with at least one blue chip prospect here. In your mind, when you look at the entire board, how many blue chippers are there in this 2026 draft class?
It's tough because I think there's probably around 7 to 8, depending on how you really want to make the cutoff. But a lot of those are at lesser valued positions, I'd say. So, I think Caleb Downs is a blue chip prospect. He's a safety. They traditionally don't go high. I think Jeremiah Love is a blue chip prospect. He's a running back. They traditionally don't go highly. I think that Sonny Styles is a blue chip prospect. He's a linebacker. They don't go highly either. So like 3 of those guys are at positions that don't traditionally go that way. I think the 2 defensive ends, Reuben Bain, Arvell Reese, are both blue chip type of prospects. And then I think Jermod McCoy is a blue chip prospect, the Tennessee corner, but he's coming off an ACL. And that's why I say 7 or 8, because I'm not sure I put him in that conversation because he didn't play all last fall. But the last time we saw him on tape, I would put him in that conversation. And then the last one being Fernando Mendoza. So I think that's where it is. If you're trading down, I think you're missing that boat. But that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, right? Because if you get just a very good, let's say, wide receiver, who's not necessarily a blue chip wide receiver like a Jordan Tyson or Mekhi Lemon, I wouldn't call blue chip guys, but I call them very good. Well, they probably get paid more than Caleb Downs, even if he's a blue chip safety, because that's just the nature of how wide receivers and safeties get paid. So it's always a difficult conversation in the draft when weighing talent versus positional value.
Speaking of that, Mike, we had a couple conversations on this show this week about the possibilities of the Cleveland Browns taking Caleb Downs at pick number 6. What's your thoughts on that? What would you think if the Cleveland Browns made that move?
So I do think there is a balance of power shift in the NFL, and we saw it this past year in that the defenses are starting to outpace the best offenses in the NFL. And I think we really saw it with a team like the Houston Texans, where you don't need to have a good offense to get to very close to a championship, right? You just need to have something there if you're dominant enough on the defensive side of the ball. Like the Broncos, the Seahawks, they weren't in the Final Four, and Seahawks obviously didn't win the title because of their offense. They won because of what they could do defensively. So a guy like Caleb Downs would get you to that realm, in my opinion, of this Browns defense of being like, hey, we're good enough to just win one on the backs of our defense. Just give us something from the offensive side of the ball. So I wouldn't argue. I think making one unit dominant is a valid team building strategy. So if you still have a need and it's still an improvement, I'm not just a guy who's like, our offense is so bad we have to go offense. It's like, no, you could use a safety. Caleb Downs is an elite safety. Why not? So I would not argue with that pick if it were to be the case. I think he's that good.
I couldn't do it. Here's why I wouldn't do it. I'm gonna let you know right now. He drafted safety, and the Browns start scoring 14 points again, 13 points. He got about 4 games. Listen, McNuggets is waiting for him. Jason Lloyd is waiting. Andrew Berry, don't you do that. Do not go out here and get you Caleb Downs and be like, we got 2. That would be 2 years in a row. You went and got Mason Graham, and you got Caleb Downs. Now, trust me, I love Caleb Downs. I think he's magnificent. I think he's a game changer. He's everything that you want in a leader in your back end. But the problem is, the Browns. Have you seen the Browns? Yeah, it's kind of tough to watch on offense. Why not give me a Tate right now and then we better, or a Jordan Tyson? And how big of a gap is there between a Caleb Downs and Jordan Tyson, Mekhi Lemon, or Tate?
No, I tend to agree. I don't think it's, like I said, I wouldn't argue with it. It's not probably where I would go in this draft class if I were the Cleveland Browns. I truthfully would probably go offensive tackle, though, for what I kind of said earlier, is that I think these wide receivers are very good. I think Jordan Tyson, like I said, I think Caleb Downs is a blue chip prospect, but truthfully, I would have on my final board that takes into positional value, I think I will have the 2 wide receivers ahead of them just because I think they are very safe wide receiver picks, that being Jordan Tyson and Carnell Tate. I think they're very safe. I think they're extremely talented. I think you can basically chalk them up to be like second contract, sort of top 15 8 wide receivers in the NFL. That's just like where I see their talent level. So that's why I would probably lean that, just because that saves you so much more. And it's obviously a massive need for this Cleveland Browns team. But also why I say go back to offensive tackle is because that's a huge need for them. And you can't find one top of round 2. You can't find one pick, was it 24 that they have, the second first-round pick. You probably can't find a starter there. If you need a starter at that position and you want them to be, close to Pro Bowl caliber, 9 times out of 10 you got to take them in the top 15. That's just the nature of the offensive tackle position. So that's why I probably lean that. But like I said, I think they'll have some options there at 6.
Mike, where do you think the quarterback position is across the league? This is consecutive drafts now where there's not a ton to pick from at the top. Is it? I'm fascinated by this. I want to write about it later on, but I'm just curious, as someone who studies these drafts, what do you think about just the cycle of where we're at with college quarterback play coming out?
I think it's. Well, so 2024 was just such a high, right? They don't distribute evenly, right? These quarterbacks in draft class. If you just look historically, that's always the case. It's like you get classes like 2004 where you have Eli Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, and you get classes like 2014 when it was just Geno Smith, right, and EJ Manuel. They're just terrible classes. So they never distribute equally. But I think this year specifically, and maybe you can count last year too, I think this year, though, is the inflection point where NIL started robbing classes, where Dante Moore, the Oregon quarterback, he doesn't go back to school if the NIL money hasn't gotten to a point where it's competing with his contract that he would have signed if he came out, right? The $5+ million, where it's like you have a real conversation on your hands just financially that these guys should probably be coming back to school because it makes them more likely to sign a second contract if they are more prepared once they get to the NFL. So I think this is the inflection point where we see a lot of quarterbacks, whether it's Lenore Sellers from South Carolina, Arch Manning from Texas, who probably a half decade ago would have jumped because you go get the payday. That was kind of just the general consensus. That was the common wisdom, was go get your money and you'll figure it out. That isn't the common wisdom anymore. It's play as much college football as you can, get as much money at the collegiate level, then you're best prepared to make as much money at the NFL level because your contracts and your career length in the NFL is so long that it just behooves you to be as prepared as possible once you get to the league. So I think that's where we're at right now, is kind of just this dip where everyone started coming back to school. Everyone's trying to extend their career length at the collegiate level. They're literally suing college football to let them back, like Trinidad Chambliss at Ole Miss. So this is where we're at. And next year, I think, is when they finally, like, that log jam gets released. And I think the 2027 class is going to be stupid good.
On the backside of that, could there be an oversaturation where there's more – this is going to sound stupid. There's more quarterbacks than teams seeking a franchise quarterback. Is that possible?
After that, you're saying like after next year, or
next year
it's going to happen?
The 27.
I think so. I think at some point in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see such a preponderance that I don't want to say everyone has a franchise quarterback, but we're like as close as we've ever been to that for a couple of reasons. One is career length. Guys used to be done in their early to mid 30s. Now guys are playing till their late 30s, early 40s. So you get probably 5 more years of career length out of these quarterbacks. And then secondly, because just quarterback training, guys are getting it from, middle school on, and there's the guys are coming in so much better prepared to the collegiate level and then so much better prepared to the NFL level that And football has just been such a dominant cultural force that if anyone's even capable of playing football, that's the sport they want to play. It's just so much more enjoyable than baseball, basketball for someone who's a quarterback, right? Specifically, it's obviously like probably the most fun position to play in any sport. So you're seeing that, and so I think we will see that start to happen. More and more teams will have a franchise guy, and there's going to be more and more talent throughout the NFL. I think it's going to not necessarily be right now, but I think within the next probably about 5 years from now, I think we'd get to about that point.
Mike, would you be surprised if the Browns drafted a quarterback at some point in this year's draft?
I would not, because that's just what we saw from Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, right? You'd be lying to yourself if you thought you saw a franchise quarterback as a rookie from either, unfortunately. So it's just the nature of the beast. When you don't have one, it doesn't hurt to keep trying. Now, I don't think it's going to be pick 6. I think it could potentially be that second first rounder with the guy, Ty Simpson from Alabama, who is really a wild card given what he put on tape this year with some very good games, some very high level tape at times. But then it's his only year as a starter. He got super banged up, had like 3 different injuries this past year. So he's really a wild card in this quarterback class. But if he falls to them in like the second, I think that's, you're for sure taking a pick at that point. So that's how I see the Browns sort of positioning themselves, is that Andrew Berry's always, the reason he drafted 2 last year is because he didn't have any. I think he's always going to keep taking shots knowing that you have to at that position.
Hey, Mike, just a hypothetical here. I'm a huge fan of Jeremiah Smith. We already know best player overall in next year's draft. But if he was in this year's draft, how high you think he'd be drafted?
Number 2. I don't think he goes number 1 because, the Raiders, and for next year, I don't know if he goes number 1 either, just because quarterback versus every other position. Obviously, if you need a quarterback, you draft a quarterback. But he is stupidly good. I mean, just one of the most incredible physical talents I've seen. Names like Julio Jones, Andre Johnson, Calvin Johnson get thrown out there, and he's in that realm, if not surpassing that realm. The guy is just a different cat all around, and I cannot wait to see what he becomes, because I think we kind of take for granted that he's just a sophomore. We're already talking about him as how elite he is, but it's like guys improve. Guys still get better physically, technically, and to think that that's possible for someone that's already as good as he is a very scary thought.
What is the all likelihood? What is the position before the Cleveland Browns where you say, if they do want to trade back, what's a position where you're like, I can't get lower than that, knowing that they probably need a receiver, knowing that they probably need offensive linemen? When you look at the board with receivers and offensive linemen, what's a point on the board where you get a little nervous and dropping back and not being able to get either a top flight tackle or a top flight receiver?
Okay, that's a great question. I think 14 is where I start to get worried that both of those classes. So, I think the top 3 receivers, Jordan Tyson, Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon for most people, I think there's a chance all 3 are gone by then. And then the top tackles, whether it's Kadyn Proctor, Spencer Fano, Francis Mauigoa, I think that's most people's top 3. I think by 15, they're gone. So if you go past the Ravens, I think you are missing the boat on both classes, is where I would say is probably a strong cutoff point that probably wouldn't want to trade down below that.
And Mike, we'll get you out of here on this one, but you mentioned the 2027 draft. The Browns have 2 picks in this 2026 draft. Do you see any scenario where Cleveland, or really any team, would be able to acquire a future 2027 pick, knowing how stacked that class is and how this 2026 class may lack the talent at the premium positions that teams typically trade up for? Do you think those 27 picks are going to be in play?
Yeah, never say never, because the Saints are always one team that is willing to move on from future draft capital. There's always some teams that really want this guy right now and to do it. But I think a 2027 first, I don't see it happening. Given how everyone has the exact same take on how 2027 is going to fare, I don't think you'll see a 2027 first rounder moved. But I think you could see like day 2 picks, day 2, day 3 picks easily moved in this. But at a first rounder, I'd be very surprised.
Awesome. That is Mike Renner from CBS. Check out his latest mock draft on CBSSports.com. Mike, really appreciate you taking some time to join us today, talk a little Browns.
For sure, fellas. Appreciate you guys.
Awesome. That was Mike Renner. Like I said, his latest mock draft on CBS. He had Kadyn Proctor going 6 to the Browns, them taking Denzel Boston, the receiver out of Washington, at 24.
His dad obviously is David Boston.
His dad is David.
I think most people would know that.
Yes.
Just
Former Ohio State, super.
monster. Absolute
Maybe the
monster.
biggest receiver just in terms of like muscle mass ever.
Muscle, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
he like there's